Hello, good evening. Welcome, welcome to the first edition of PALAKwento. If you guys don't know what PALAKwento is, it's more of a parang kwentuhan ba? Kwentuhan talk show with different landscape architects or different people from the allied profession just to help get the word out of our profession and what landscape architects do in the Philippines basically. And yeah, tonight we will be talking to someone very well known to people around the Philippines for his very informative sketches, very informative diagrams, and historical data that shows what Philippines was like before, how Philippines can progress also later on. And yeah, I think without much introduction, let's bring in our speaker or our guest for tonight. Basically, our guest for tonight is Sir Paulo Alcazaren. So, sir, hello.
Hi, Alfonso. Good evening.
Hi. Good evening. How is everything? How's everything with you naman today? It's been gloomy the past how many days, so
Yeah, a bit of sun this morning, but
yeah.
other than that, just the usual day of emergencies and and stress.
Yeah, that's true. I also heard that you had celebrated your birthday yesterday. Is that right?
Yes, my 66th birthday. So,
Oh wow.
yes, I am
Not
old.
100th. No naman. Well, I think I saw in your post that your children gave you a birthday cake of 100 years old. So
Yeah, my two crazy sons gave me three cakes. The first cake said happy, happy, and second said 100, and the third said birthday. So, they just wanted to make the point that they know I'm old.
how was the celebration though?
I've had
Especially
better,
with
of course.
oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. But at least you're with family. Were you with family at least?
No, my son, my eldest lives in Quezon City. My
Okay.
youngest was out in a lockdown vacation, and he arrived in the evening. But since he was in a lockdown situation, he's in quarantine for the next 2 weeks.
Oh wow.
So I spent my birthday with the kasambahay and Facebook.
Oh
So
okay.
yes, it could be better. Of course, everyone has had better birthdays compared to the last 2 years. Well, year and a half. So 500 days.
Yeah. Shocks. Have we been on lockdown for 500 days already? I can't even believe that it's been like that long.
Yes, about it's over 500 days. So it's like we're all in prison.
I know. I know. It's kind of stressful. And I think it might be a little bit harder for you because you're the type of person pa naman that would want to go out and see everything and, how has it been?
It's all hard for everyone, and of course, it's been difficult to deal with.
Right.
And of course, we've all lost a lot of loved ones and friends and colleagues. especially my generation, because a lot of them were more prone to dying when
That's true.
catching the thing. So I've lost good friends, architects, interior designers, uh, knock on wood, uh, and other professionals. And even in the PRC, where I sit on the board of landscape architecture, we lost uh, a few examiners in
Oh,
different
really?
fields, because they're all in their 50s and 60s and 70s. So one of them caught it while checking exam questions at the PRC.
Wow.
Yes, so it's an unusual and terrible time we're living
Yeah.
through.
Yeah. Um.
Sorry, this is not the
This.
usual. This best not
Yeah.
the
It's
best
it's
time to find.
it's not the best time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Monday
Definitely.
Monday evenings are not the best time to interview anyone, if I may
I
suggest.
totally agree with you. I
It
totally
should be
agree with you. It's the.
Friday, so at least we have the weekend to look forward to.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, everybody
Definitely.
still has to go to work. Well, at least
Yes. Yes.
those of us lucky enough to have work. But
Yeah. I totally agree with you.
go ahead. I
I
mean,
have.
I don't know how this thing is going.
It's really just super casual. I don't want to be the type of person to be interviewing you. It's
So
really
who's
more of just like
interviewing me? Is there anyone interviewing
no
me,
one,
or
no
is
one,
it
no one's
just a free flow?
interviewing. I mean, it's yeah, it's just a free flow kind of thing. I have well, we're our topic for today is the LA and the pandemic recovery, and it's more of like, how do you think, what the role will the landscape architects be when it comes to the pandemic recovery? And I know we have also had a few talks hosted by Pala and different allied professions that have talked about it, but I guess more of like a maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit more intimate type of pandemic recovery. Because we've always been talking about these big plans of what to do and how to go about, like, say, life in general, but more of just like maybe home at the start of the home, and maybe we could branch out from there. Yeah. But I was actually interested because I saw that there was a post that were you the commencement speaker for the College of Architecture graduation yesterday?
Yes,
How was that?
I have no idea. And one of the things that I miss in giving talks or speeches is the connection with an audience.
That's true.
Usually, it's better if I have feedback. I can see whether they're interested or not. You know,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Zoom does not allow that. So if I tell a joke, I get no response. I don't know how I'm doing. But yesterday was unusual because I didn't have any jokes, which is usually what I do to spice my talks. And they only gave me 10 minutes on the subject of collaboration amongst design professionals,
Okay.
and I had to cram all of my thoughts into 10 minutes and give everyone an idea of what to expect in real life. And I guess it turned out pretty dry. I looked at the chat box, and there was no feedback
No one
at all.
commenting. Really, at
No
all,
one.
zero.
No.
Maybe they're just scared.
Um, no, I don't think they know who I am. And
Okay.
despite Mam Zeni's introduction of me, the 40 plus graduates in architecture and a dozen or so in LA and the masters, I don't have any idea whether they connected with what I spoke about, which is about the need for collaboration between architects, landscape architects, interior designers, and environmental planners. So I
Right.
gave them an outlook of what to expect once they graduate or in the real world, and the reality that all projects you have to interact with. Usually, in an ordinary commercial development, you have to interact with about eight, eight, seven, eight, to as many as 15 different consultants in different fields, and
Right.
uh, schoolwork does not prepare you for that. And the first thing you need to do is find out what these people do. And going through school dealing only with either architecture or landscape architecture, few of our graduates have any idea of the dynamics in the process of design and construction. And that's what you learn outside of school. And then I told them, though these are the disciplines you have to relate to or and to deal with, especially if you're an LA having to force people to understand what you do. And
Yeah.
I've been in the profession for 40 years, and the the notion that we just specify plants is still prevalent amongst a lot of people in the industry. It's only very few who understand what we do. And so walking into meetings at the start of a project is always an exercise in educating everyone in the room about what you do. So for
Right.
those of us who've been in the business long enough and dealing um with architects, and usually that's the first line of the first batch of people you deal with is the clients and the architects, both of whom a lot of the clients and a lot of the architects don't know what you do. We're lucky to work with a limited number of architects who know exactly what we bring to the table. So when I'm called in by, say, Willie Coscolwella or Andy Loxin or Meloy Casas, Bong Resho, these people understand what we bring to the table. And since a lot of them are my generation or my cohorts, and
Yeah.
I know them personally, and outside of professional life also, and because of the fact I was editor in chief of Blueprint for 10 years,
Yeah.
so my persona amongst these people is goes beyond my being a landscape architect. So that gives me a bit of an edge over most LAs walking into a room. Is that a lot of people will know me as either a journalist or writer, or in the cultural field rather than just landscape architecture. So that
Okay.
gives me a bit of an edge to be able to project myself and the company's intent for the project. So
Right.
compared to compared to a lot of young practitioners or newly established offices, unless you know the clients or the architects personally, it's very hard to say anything or do anything or suggest anything uh, to the clients or architects.
I agree. I agree. I
I
totally
mean,
agree.
that's what I
Yeah.
told the graduating batch of architects and landscape architects is it's a matter of attaining confidence and competency and being able to let everyone know what exactly you do, which is essentially you're the person or the firm that deals with the design of the outdoor spaces, and these outdoor spaces need to uh, relate to the architecture and the interior design inside. Everything flows from inside to outside, and in between it, you have the envelope that is architecture. And what you're designing is not plants or greenery; it's space.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, people forget that, and so they look at you. Sometimes I propose something to change something in the overall layout, even of the architecture, and they look at me with a questioning face. Of course, now that I'm older and have gray hair, they have a tendency to listen. But I've had gray hair since I was in my 30s, so I always acted 10 years older. And my great teacher in that respect was IP Santos. So I learned my people skills and my client skills. My
From him.
pambobola skills
Pambobola.
from IP Santos. I was with him for 4 years in '78 and until 1982. Yes, that long ago, and most of the young people cannot imagine anything older than 5 years ago. But yes, there are a bunch of us who have been in the business over 3 decades, and I was with him, a young designer, uh, by sheer luck or by sheer uh, confidence in myself. I was able to get to a position. I was designing for him, and I would go with him to projects in Hong Kong and Malaysia. And um, at that time, this was 79, 80. IP Santos's office was the busiest uh, practice in LA in the Philippines, and most probably in Southeast Asia. There were at that time it was like 15 people in the office, which
Mhm.
is big then. Of course, now you've got people with 20 or 30. I think what's his name? See, I'm having a senior moment.
It's okay. It's okay. But
Criaris
Criarius.
has a construction arm, so he's the Mike's plantilla before lockdown was towards the 50 person range, including the construction arm. Of course, his
Yeah.
design arm, I think, is about 20 thereabouts, which is about the size of Aurelius, and PGAA is round about that, and I think even is it Plantur, someone. So there are only a handful of companies. Well, at the time in IP Santos, 15 was a huge number, and he was running. IP Santos was running at any given time about 20 to 30 projects of all
Wow,
scales
that
and
many.
sizes. Yes, um, and that allowed even the younger designers like myself to take on projects personally, even if we didn't have that much experience. There were the seniors to
Yeah.
look up to, but that gave us the opportunity, if you would take it, to really project yourself and learn on the job. Um,
I
so
agree. I
oftentimes,
agree.
most of the projects that IP would assign or have his two associates assigned to you, there were only two associates, Carlito Pesons and Oscar Dintag, and right below them was Zeni Galingan. They would assign the projects, and a lot of the times, if it were a smaller project, IP would just give a very, very general direction.
Mhm.
At most, a rough sketch, but sometimes not even that if it was a bread and butter project like a condo. And
Yeah.
often, because the presentations were every day, um,
Every day. You'd have
yes,
presentations every day,
yes, every
sir?
day, yes.
Wow.
That's how busy.
Okay.
In fact, when I was with PDAA, the firm
Yeah.
with Esons, Timandigalet, and Alcazaren, at our peak,
Yes, yes.
because you go through certain peaks and lows.
I agree.
They're in peak times, uh, say the mid 90s in Singapore, and I would fly Mam Zeni over to assist. We only had about 8 people, I think. We had presentations every day. We had about 2 dozen projects on the boards. And with IP Santos going back to 79, 80, often he would you would go with him to a project and you would have to brief him in the car,
Because he doesn't know
um,
exactly what project
because
you're gonna
he
be
didn't know.
doing.
And this is, remember, this is the time when there's no laptops or PowerPoints. Everything
Right,
was
right.
by hard copy on boards, on
On
illustration
yeah, and chasing pad as
illustration
well.
board. So often, and he was really a master at absorbing
Information.
information, and he would have the full gist of it because of his experience at that time.
Yeah, of
This is
course, of course.
1980. He was already 25 years in the business. So after 25 years of work, after about 15 years of experience in the industry, if you've uh, eaten enough rice, as they say, and gotten your experience, then after about 15 years, you get to be able to think on your feet and present.
Right.
So he would be able to carry the presentation on his own, and just turn to you if there was some information he did not know. And so that's how I learned to think on my feet and um, tell the story. You have to create a narrative for the clients. You cannot A presentation is not just technical. Oh, this is the area for
Yeah.
passive, this area for active. This No, you tell a story, and you have to make the story compelling enough and engaging enough so that you catch the attention of the client. So you only have a few minutes to do this, and especially now when attention spans are very short, um, it takes a certain skill. So there is no webinar you can attend to get that skill.
That's true. That's
You
true.
have to
Do
be
you have
able
any
to do it.
go ahead, please.
Yeah, you just have to find the opportunity to do that. It's only after you've done it 100 times that you learn how to communicate. So I told the new graduates that aside
Yes.
from competency in your field, in the profession of in the design process, the second most important is competency in communication. And I felt a
Definitely.
little strange because I did the whole speech in English, but the language of the commencement exercises and all of
Was
everything
in
else
Tagalog.
was
Yeah.
in Filipino. Excuse me, it's
In
not
yeah, in
Tagalog, it's
Filipino.
Filipino.
Sorry, yeah, Filipino. My mistake.
And unfortunately, I'm Bisayan Hilaw, so my Tagalog is really awful. And I'm
Really.
from that generation where we were brought up thinking in English. So I think in English, and I have to translate into Tagalog. I mean, my sons are better at it than myself. But the reality is, and this is not a criticism, well, actually it is, of the educational system in the Philippines over the last 30 years, is that our graduates have lost the facility of communicating in English, and their Filipino communication skills are quite wanting, if I may say. Can't string two sentences together to save your life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, even graduates save for people like yourself, you must have a different background than most, so you can communicate in English. But the reality is that English is the lingua franca of the people that make the decisions in all of the larger projects, and a lot of the
That's true.
higher end or upper class, the higher end projects. The clients, if it's a residence, they're all English speaking, and will not look at you with any. You will lose some respect or some credibility if you can't communicate in English. It's
In
a
the
it's
state
a
English,
language of
right?
corporations,
Yeah.
and you have to. I mean, Singaporeans and Hong Kong people, even though they have an accent, can speak in English.
They'll still speak in state English.
So
That's right.
I think that we've forgotten that most people are bilingual and can be bilingual, effectively bilingual and trilingual as they are in Hong Kong and Singapore. They speak
Yes.
English, they speak Mandarin, and they speak their dialect, which is
Yeah.
Hakka, Malay, or Indian, or whatever. So they're trilingual, but they can
Right.
communicate. Here, I think
And yeah.
we've de-emphasized everything except Filipino, but you cannot explain complex technical terms or concepts in
In
Filipino.
Filipino.
You have to do linguistic acrobatics just to translate,
Yeah,
say,
that's true.
a term like geographic information systems. Diba?
That's
So,
true. And
mahirapan ka
sometimes it's
talaga.
it.
You cannot, it just doesn't translate. Of course, if you're good in communications, you can switch from Taglish to English and still maintain your
Right. Right.
credibility. But when you
Right.
switch to English, I wish I was more facile with Filipino and I could switch, but I don't. So I tend to keep my communication in English just to maintain consistency. So there's no misinterpreting. And of course, as you go down the ladder in the group of people you talk to, which is usually the technical working groups or on site, then I
Right.
switch to Taglish because you're
Yeah.
dealing
That's
with
true.
people
That's
who
true.
then get a nosebleed if you speak always in English.
Yeah.
But I get the
I agree.
nosebleed. I get nosebleed even from people on my staff. So I
Really.
make a point. I make a point to speak in English as much as possible because it's also training for them if they ever want to make it outside when you go corporate or have to deal with corporations and people higher up. It must be in English.
That's true. That's
Uh,
true. I agree.
Even if our clients were foreign, unless you learn Mandarin or Japanese or work overseas. But then it's also English. I mean, the lingua franca in Shanghai for design is English. It's not
Right.
Mandarin, although it's a help to speak Mandarin, but still it's English because all the expats use that as their means of communication. Anyway, I learned that communication skills from IP Santos, and to be able to think on your feet. But you can't really communicate or think on your feet or project your image or design intent as well as the image of the company if you're not if you can't communicate well, and you can't communicate well if you're not literate. That means if you don't read, if you don't
That's
if
true.
you're not up to speed on all of the current trends and speak the
Current trends.
language.
That's true.
Yes, otherwise when you get the foreign consultant come in and they try to bamboozle uh, the client, you can
Yeah.
see right through them. I can see right through them because I keep up to speed.
Right. Right.
So then after they leave, I explain to the clients that binobola lang kayo because
Yeah. That's
all
true.
they're
That's true.
doing is rehashing um, slightly older
Old.
concepts and espousing them or presenting them as new or as something that they thought of. So it
Right.
makes them look
Right.
palagi silang nagpapapogi. So
Yeah.
in technical terms, what these foreign consultants do is arbitrage. Being an
Arbitrage.
being an arbitrager. If you're in economics, you get something from another country and then sell it in a different country, and the guise of
At
something
a,
innovative or new, and you get a higher value for that. So what they're doing
exactly.
is intellectual arbitrage, in that they're
Okay.
rehashing ideas that are already old, couple of years old, and then present it to clients who don't know any better. And because you're white and four and blonde, then you're paid 10 times more than the local guy. Of course, I'm the local guy. I know that nambobola lang sila.
Yeah.
So every chance I get, I tell the clients nambobola lang sila, and what they're
But
espousing is really awful. So imagine this: I'm in a meeting, and by accident, not by accident, not that I want it. There's a foreign consultant who comes in and walks in and thinks he's hot shit. Um, and I can see, right, and they're usually in the 30s. They're all 30 years my junior.
right, right, right,
So
right.
even their own institutional knowledge of their own company is not there. So I love studying design firms and their history and heritage, because you learn a lot about practice from how offices get put together. One thing
That's true.
that is lacking here, and one thing that a lot of our members in Pala have little knowledge of, is the genealogy of LA firms. We all came from just two firms.
Two. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
IP Santos and Associates and
And
Dolly
Dolly
Perez.
Perez. I know.
And
Yeah.
if I had time, if I were still an academic, I would do a genealogy, as other scholars have done in the States for architecture and landscape architecture. And you can trace where all the present firms come from. I mean, PGAA came from PDAA, which is Poson, Simenlig, Aleta, Alcazaren. Poson, Simenlig, and Aleta worked for IP in the 60s and 70s. Pison's, one of the original staff of IP, also worked for Dali Perez. And so those you can see, and you can learn a lot about how these firms got their contacts with various clients by understanding the history of these firms, which we don't have. So we don't have any source for all our young graduates to see where all these firms came from and who these people are. So I have a suspicion that maybe 80%, 70 to 80% of the membership of Pala don't know the background of myself, Ma'am Zeni, or people like Asiman League, or anyone younger than, say, Mike Espiritu
Um.
or Holtz.
Right.
And then their knowledge of the practices of the firms themselves is just not there, because for one thing, us principals are so busy. None of us have. No one has written a book about their own firms except IP Santos, and that took him
How many
until
years after?
the early 2000s to write it, which would have been after about 45 years.
Right.
So my target for my own uh, firm or my own bio would be in about 5 years' time. I have to publish, otherwise I
Okay.
missed the boat. And I
Have you
enjoined
started
my
writing it?
yes, I have. I have an outline,
Okay.
which
Okay.
I've
Wow.
done because of there's so much time during this pandemic. I
That's right. That's
would
right.
I would enjoin Epoy, Aurelio, even Mike Espiritu to somebody should put this together, even if we don't complete our a 280 page.
Family tree. It's like a
No,
family tree,
even
no?
just the I thought this would be something like what would happen in this interview, and I would suggest that each one tell a story of how they got to where they are, and
Well,
so
it
that
turned out to be that way. So
the young people should understand how difficult it is to practice. of course, the danger there, and I ended my talk yesterday slightly, I think, on a difficult side, because I told them, it's called the practice because you need to practice. And if you look at the professions of medicine, law, or engineering, they are all called practices because it takes 10 to 15 years of practice to get to the minimum level of competence, or at the point where you can set up your own firm. Uh, of course, you can bypass that a bit, which I did because I had only about 5 years under my belt. But I did it by understanding that I could not do it by myself. So I selected three older partners. Mr. Pesons,
Okay.
Mr. Dimbanlig, and Mr. Aleta were all 10 years older than I was.
So were you the one that set like everything up with PDAA? Were you the one
Yes,
like trying to
yes,
spearhold this the
yes.
spearhead?
Although, of course, now
Okay.
that Mr. Peson and Mr. Aleta have passed away, they cannot contest me.
Yes. Oh,
No,
okay.
but they know,
Well, we still
and
have Sir Ace. We still have Sir Ace
they
naman.
yeah, of course, there's Ace. But to be fair, uh, AC-Man League already had its own firm, which was called RQ.
Yes. R cube.
Yes, yes. This is way before Hedla. Hedla only happened
Okay.
after PDAA wrapped up its operations over 10 years ago. So AC Manlig was already practicing because he had left IP Santos. I think it was in 79 or thereabouts. Mr. Aleta was just back from Australia and his masterat. Mr. Pesons
Okay.
would have forever been with IP Santos if I had not pulled him out.
Pulled him out.
So yes, so I suggested we get together and do a partnership because there were certain opportunities that IP Santos was not taking advantage of. Yeah, and I
That's
figured
good.
we could. So this is where you can learn lessons from all of us. Epoy Aurelio, for the longest time, used to work with foreign firms. When I went
In
to
Hong
Singapore
Kong.
to set up PDAA in '89, he had already been working for Belt Collins at the time there,
Yeah.
and then had moved to Hong Kong for various people, including an Australian firm. Anyway, a series of, I think, 2, 3 firms, but mainly Belt Collins before he went out on his own. And this was rather late in the 1990s. He was still with the foreign firms based in Hong Kong. It's only after, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, after the financial crisis of '98. So it's a lot of the times it's financial crisis or traumatic events like now pandemic where you find people take the take action and embark on something difficult because it's an opportunity. Um, and so Efren Aurelio did that. I mean, by the 1980s, Dolly Perez had semi-retired, and so a number of people in my batch, Dicky, uh, see, I don't know why I'm having a senior moment.
Dicky. It's okay.
Yes,
But
Sir
yeah.
Dicky, and a number of
Yeah.
other uh, uh, of his generation joined forces with Dolly Perez, who became their mother hen, and they set up Design
Yes. Yes.
DK Altavas and Philip Lorenzana and like 4 or 5 other people um, came under the wing of Dolly Perez, and they set up Total Design Atelier. And so then in the early 80s, there were 3 firms, which was Total Ateliers, PDAA, and IP Santos. And that's where that stayed until the People Power revolution. And
Okay.
in the 1990s, you had the next generation of firms that started moving the original partners of SGS, which Vic Dolog, now now heads.
Right, right.
Or I brought a number of people over to Singapore, including Neil Samak, who eventually, uh, after working for PDA Singapore, worked for I think two other firms before setting up his own. So you can trace the all of the firms currently practicing here in the Philippines. Mike Espiritu used to work for me in the 90s, before he worked for a foreign firm that had offices here. And so you can see that the professional career is highly dependent on an understanding that you have to go through a period of apprenticeship under a mentor or working for other people. You cannot get it from books. You will fail if you think you can do it, because the lessons that you need to learn are are in the real world, in the field. And it's very hard to get anyone to take, unless you are the son of the owner or the daughter of the owner, COO, of a big company that
Yeah,
gives you the
company,
projects.
child of owner,
Child
right?
of owner, no?
Yeah,
Then you won't get any work. Unless you're your own client, you won't get any work. So it's a chicken
right.
or the egg thing, for practitioners. I'm talking about practice even as an individual. Unless you want to spend your life just doing residential work, or you become corrupt and work in shady deals with the government, as I've heard some people have done. Um, there's no way to get around practice unless you actually practice in the real world. And these are things that are not taught. I mean, this is regardless of the pandemic. The pandemic is something we all have to live through, and it's not just us.
Right.
What's next for? And there's a question here about what's next for landscape
What's
architecture.
for,
It's still
yeah,
the
yeah.
same.
In the
It's still
pandemic,
the
it's the
same.
same.
It has not changed. Our role in the design professions, in the design of outdoor spaces for human use and enjoyment, will still be the same, albeit a bit more emphasized because now we realize we need outdoor space. So the role is the
Right.
same. There is no earth changing change in direction.
Yeah.
We just need to get people to know that this is what we do, and finally hire us to do it, because for one, there until now been only 500 of us, of which less than half are actually practicing. So you have
Yes.
200 plus landscape architects in a population of 110 million and counting, with 145 cities, 1,500 towns. How many landscape architects are servicing the needs of all of these people? And we're 6 out of 10 living in urban areas. It's urban areas that need our work, right? Few of
Yeah.
us, very, very few of us, have any work in rural areas designing upland, sustainable agri, this really
Yeah.
specialized work that
Right, right.
you can't earn a living that way unless you're working
Yeah.
for the UN or for groups like that. Then you have other specialties or have done a master's or a PhD. Most of the work of the graduates of LA will be in urban areas, and that's the outlook. 145 cities, 1,500 towns. You got urban development and mixed use and commercial, and all of these projects that now here, at least here in Metro Manila, use landscape architects to one degree or the other. Not ideal in every case, and that's the
Yeah.
outlook. It's not. I believe we should get our mind out of this new normal for post pandemic. Yes, uh, we will have something to do. But it's always been what we were supposed to do anyway. It's just that we have not applied ourselves uh, um, well enough to grow the
Yeah.
profession. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not putting down what we've achieved over the last 30 or so years since IP Sound, 40 years since about 35 years since Palo was established. It's just that we have not taken a lot of the opportunities to do it better. There are only up to today just a few firms, and we're competing against ourselves and suffering the same problems of small fees and our clients taking advantage of working each of us against ourselves in terms of competing fees. We have not addressed that yet. We have not addressed getting, and I've just lost Fonso. Am I still online? We're live?
Yes, sir. Sorry, sorry, sorry. You are. Sorry, go ahead.
Right.
Hello? Yeah, you're still there.
Okay, I'm still on. Well,
Yeah,
that's
you
it.
are
I
my
mean,
mistake.
because have you? I'm reading the questions. Have you already proposed new
Yeah.
technology strategies that are relevant this pandemic and in the recovery phase? I'm sorry, I'm a little tired of the pandemic,
I
and
would assume that you are.
I'm tired of the pandemic. And technology is technology. I think you have to get out of the mindset that just because you have new technology, you'll get work tomorrow, right?
Right,
And
right.
new processes. It still boils down when you look at landscape architecture problems. It still boils down to understanding your site, understanding the needs of the clients, understanding, and usually you have some architecture involved, understanding the context of the site and the requirements of the functions of a building within the site, and you find the solution. Everything else, technology, whether it's CAD, whether it's data mining, whether it's whatever, they're all just tools. You won't be a better designer if you don't have the basics right, if you have not found the solution in terms of design. Because
Yeah.
everything at the end of the day is the space that you put together based on your creativity, and not because of any algorithm that will help you, supposedly help you design properly. There's no algorithm except experience. It's no algorithm because a person with experience, like I said, 15 to 20 years of experience, will take one look at the site and already know what the options are. And a lot of the times, people like myself or Efren Aurelio, Mike Espiritu, all of people, Vic Dulog, everyone who's at that level, in the first meeting, alam na nila kung anong gagawin. Almost all of the time. Unless it's extremely complex and you don't have enough data, but for certain project types, you will already know. Of course, we never let the clients know we know that already. Otherwise, they won't pay you.
Yeah. They won't pay exactly.
I walk out of a lot of these meetings. I already have the solution. I sketch it out when I get back to the office, or right now after a Zoom
Right.
meeting, and then
Yeah.
my staff can assist. But we never let it. We never show it immediately. The
Right.
reason you pay people with experience the big bucks is because of their experience. So people say, "Oh, 5 minutes lang sa iyo yan." So yung bayad, so yung bayad sa inyo, ano na lang, 50,000 instead of 500,000
Uh,
pesos. But you're paying for the experience of that 15, 20, 30, 40 years that has led to that point where you know what the options are. That's what you pay for. That's the value you have. It's the experience in creating solutions and finding innovative. The innovation is tying things together. I have to tell people there is no such thing as an original idea. Nothing.
yes.
There is no
Yeah.
such thing as that. I'm a history buff, and I'm sorry, I'm a published historian. So if you study history, the history of ideas, uh, the new ideas come from permutations of older ideas. You make the connections, or you jump from one field to the other and make. That's where you get the aha moment, is being to apply what other people have learned in other disciplines to your discipline, blah blah blah, and then your neurons work, and then you make all the connections, and then you come out with something, at least on the face of it, truly creative and
Yeah.
new, but you know that there is, may pinanggalingan lahat yan. It
Yeah,
all
it all
comes
comes
from
from something.
understanding. And if you don't study history and history of design, then you think you're innovating, but people have done it better than you have. You just feel that you feel, I'm sorry, that's the UP sense of entitlement, just because they read four or five books when they were undergrads. It doesn't work that way. So,
Yeah.
you have to keep on reading, keep on studying history and theory and criticism to be able to understand that your ideas need to evolve all of the time. My design thinking has evolved since 30 years
I'm
ago,
sure.
but the
I'm sure.
basis for that is the permutation comes as you learn how your ideas have been applied or have not been applied. This is where again the as they say, youth is wasted on the young, because they think that after they've done one project, they are the masters of the universe.
Of
And
course.
in my talk yesterday, and that's why I don't think I got really any good uh, feedback, is because I sort of gave them all a reality check. I told them my suggestion is you can't call yourself a competent landscape architect unless you've done at least 15 projects of different scales and scopes with 15 different sets of consultants to be able to say you're competent in the field, because you dealt with different clients, dealt with different consultants, dealt with different sites, dealt with different typologies of
Yes.
projects, and have applied all of this. And then I said, from start to finish, that's why when people leave the office after 6 months, I said, are you sure? My suggestion is, at least the very minimum, you do 5 projects of different types. Not of course 15 would be better, but 5 of
Mm-hmm.
different types: one restaurants, one condo, one resort, whatever you have, at least 5 different. You start with that and work your way up to 15, because otherwise you can't call yourself a master of anything. You're still just learning. And even after 15, that at that point, things catch up to you, because then you will have new project types, or new requirements, or demographics have changed and lifestyles have changed. So you have to understand that. And 15 projects of any given type, you have not covered everything. So I always wondered why people in the staff had difficulty also trying to relate. Then this was maybe after 20 years in the business. Then I realized a lot of those people never stayed more than 6 or 7 or 8 months, and they will always go and work for VHS or some drafting dead end job like that, where you're just relegated to being a cog in the wheel. And then a lot of the hardscape is done by architects, and you end up just doing planting design. I mean, landscape architecture is not just planting design; it's everything else.
Yeah.
So you
I
you
agree.
are you are earning a living. It's you get only to a certain point. Maybe you can retire based on your savings, but well, it all depends on you whether you want to end up just being a cog in the wheel or work for a large company, or whether you actually want to practice and actually profess something. That's why they call it a
Right.
profession. If you have nothing to profess, then you're fine. You're happy. I have no problem with that. And you can lead a happy life. But a person like myself, um, I want to practice. I want to see my ideas come to life, and that's where I always suggest that you do it from start to finish. That means you're in the first meeting with the clients, who tells them their crazy vision of what they want before it gets value engineered to nothing. until the time that you're doing the punch listing on site and fighting with the contractors because they never follow your specs anyway, right? You'll have to go through that a few cycles, five, at least five, ideally 15 times, and that's the magic number. And then I will have no difficulty calling you competent enough in the profession. But before that, you will have your rice to eat. That's just the way it is, and that's how you get respect from others in the industry who've gone through that. People will see right through you. There's only just so many things that you can get away with. Having a degree from the University of the Philippines, definitely no. I'm sorry to say. You really have to start from the bottom and work yourself your way up. And very few UP graduates I find in this past few generations have been able to do that, unfortunately. That's my disappointment. I couldn't say that yesterday,
Yeah,
but
of
I did
course. Of
make
course you shouldn't.
I did make some reference to it. I had one line that said, "When you talk with people you collaborate with and have to collaborate with, um, you must um, take a humble stance, speak humbly, and leave your ego at the door, and leave any misguided sense of entitlement also at the door, because that's where you don't last long in the company, and even less longer if you have to deal with clients who see right through you. It's just not. I'm sorry. I know I was young, and I had there was a very short period of time where I thought I could make it that way because I was a UP
Mhm.
graduate. But very quickly, again because of my experience with IP Santos and having to deal with a wide range of projects in his company, I knew that it would take a while for me to get to that point, or I had to partner with other people, which I did, which is Mr. Peson's, Aleta, and Dimanlig, to be able to pull it off. So I had to be a quick study, and the way I did that was, of course, continuously reading up on current work with the journals. The Landscape Architecture magazine was my Bible ever since I first read it in IP Santos's office, and I've subscribed to it, you know, all these years, and of course the books themselves. But then my reading material expanded into planning and placemaking. So that's why eventually I got into, of course, planning, because it's the larger context. But you can gravitate towards other fields related to LA, which is landscape conservation, which is sustainability, which is coastal projects, or riverine. There's so many other specialties that you can get into that will enhance your position or your practice. But it's important to also work with people with a well-rounded background, so you can offer. We're not at the point where any of the landscape architecture firms can specialize in anything, because there are just
Right.
a half dozen firms of
A
any size,
handful. Yeah.
and maybe another six. So all in all, you have maybe 12 to 15 firms that are two or three or larger, all the way up to 20 plus. If you combine all of that, then you have just about 100 people, or much less, maybe 80 people working in these 15 firms. 80 people is just what GHD or what IDO has. I'm sorry, AECOM has in their
AECOM,
plantilla.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
how the hell do we expect to compete with foreigners when their plantillas are bigger than our entire practicing field in the Philippines? We have to think of other ways to to compete, and we can't compete as separate firms. We have to get our act together and assert ourselves, grow our numbers, educate more people, give them the experience. I- uh, um, it's disappointing that like in our firm and in a number of other firms, we try and give everyone the opportunity, but they don't take it because all they're
Okay.
after is that 6 to 8 months, 10 months, maybe a year before they can apply for work in some of the outsourcing companies or go overseas. We're not against that, but the reality is it's a chicken or the egg thing. If we don't get better staff who leave you all the time, we can't get better work, we can't get paid better. And so I think I'm venting all my frustration now, but you find the same
Yeah,
sentiment
it's okay.
with all of the other heads of offices. I'm just letting you know.
Right, right.
And
I know.
whoever
Don't worry.
there's what do you suggest to new graduates? My suggestion is
I think
work
you
in
just
an
suggested it
office.
already. Actually, yeah, you already
Who are
suggested
starting
them.
landscape architecture, new students who are starting, oh, new students. I mean, if you're a student, just
Uh,
study. But if you're a graduate,
yeah,
work and work for someone
work.
first. Work for someone with a track record. Otherwise, how are you going to even learn? And when you're in that office, I tell people, and all the files are open. You can look at any of the past work, and few of them do. I mean,
That's
during
true.
the downtime, they're on Facebook and TikTok rather than looking at in the old days when I was with IP Santos, I spent my merienda time and lunchtime making halongkat all of the old drawings and looking at details and asking the seniors what happened here, what happened there. Tell me the story. I
Really,
got lots of stories, and that's how I
that's
learned
great.
fast. Is because I learned the stories behind the projects, and a lot of these people are willing to share and you learn from that.
Yeah,
You sit on the shoulders of people who came before you. You never do it on your own. That would be you're too full of yourself if you think that.
right,
So
right.
unless you acknowledge that that you need to do that, then there's no hope for you. You'll just become a legend in your own mind. It's really no substance in that. I'm sorry. I'm telling you the way it is. So it's hard to walk into a room now and see the blank faces of people or people who come to apply and don't even know what you've done, what the company has done, or what you represent. Uh, Maybe 1 in 20 people come to the office have any idea of the track record of my company or my own background. A lot of my readers are not from landscape architecture because I write for uh, wait, there's another question. Are there
The
any
question,
changes
yeah.
in your strategies in mobilizing a company, in your career or in your study? No change. Just work hard, study hard, read everything you can, and understand that you know the 3 hours you spend surfing Shopee or Lazada could be better well spent understanding things around the world. It's just so. I mean, yes, of course you have downtime, but I ask people. So we've been locked down for 500 days. In those 500 days, how many books have you read? Even if those books are just your profession, I don't I don't recommend you just read about your profession. You read about the world. I read about history. I read about urban economics. I read about forest planning. But all of this are tied to landscape architecture, and you have to make the
Right,
connections because that's what's going to affect your practice in the future.
right, right,
May we know
right.
your favorite LA related books? Just anything. If you go and if you have Amazon or Kobo or Kindle, and you type in landscape architecture, it will give you 200 books. And then, of course, you won't be able to tell if a good book is good. And what I do with the books is to look at if possible, and you can't do it all the time with Amazon or Kindles, look at the bibliography. But you also, after a
Okay.
while, you know who these authors are. That's the test of knowing whether the books are good or not, is if I can identify the authors of the books. Uh,
Right.
and then you know what they've written. So when I read a book, say by Ian Morley, who writes about urban history of the Philippines, based in Hong Kong, and he's written two books with several journals. I've read the two books. I've read some of his journal entries. And if you look for people writing about LA, and you look at the various trends in well, the last major trend was landscape urbanism with what's his face in Australia, and then you look at the all the work of the current practitioners based in the U.S. James Corner, the guy who did the Highline, Hargraves. You look at Gustafson. You look at so you look at the current big practitioners in LA and planning and related fields, and then you can find a lot of reading material that question the work or look at the value of the work that this type of people are doing. But it's always related. It's always an overlap between architecture planning, landscape architecture, design of the built environment. So you have to broaden your interest, and then you pick and choose. So I try and read something that's very specific to LA, which is by reading LA Magazine, which is, by the way, is online now. And then you read. I try and read. There were several other magazines, even international ones, on landscape architecture. It's hard to read the UK books or magazines because a lot of the references are UK or European projects, but you can read that. And the anthologies or the compilations of projects that in books published in China, if you go to the Big Bad Wolf sale every year, and the last one was last year, you will find a lot of those compendiums of current landscape architecture work. And these are very
Yes. Yeah.
current ones, and a lot of them produced by the outsourcing companies that use Filipino LAs and artists to produce them. So you see all of this done, but then you have to understand where all of the geometries and the direction, the design directions come from, and you can't do that just by looking at the pictures alone. You will be able to absorb a lot, being Filipino, like just like our singing prowess, kaya nating gumaya, plakang-plaka.
Uh-uh.
But it's a vacuous thing because it's mindless copying. You
Right.
cannot,
Right.
you will not be able to develop your own voice if all you do is copy and not have a basis or create and not have put together your own design philosophy or ideology. I mean, not that I'm for ideology, but at least you must have the critical thinking and analysis and create your own outlook and process in design based on all of your reading and the experience that you've had all as the years go along. It's always evolving, and once you stop, you will find that you'll be repeating yourself again and again. So there are times when I notice and I tell my guys, like, Jerome, didn't I do this before? It seems that we're repeating it, and then I step back because it's very easy to default into something
Yeah.
because you're just lazy or you're tired. And so in the office, the collaborations happen when you allow the junior designers or the your associates to do schemes other than your own, and have them question what you do so that they develop. So that's what I miss in this pandemic, is that in the office we have big tables around which
Yeah.
I lay out the project, and then I ask them, why are we approaching it this way? And the problem with a lot of new staff or younger staff or even older ones is the default is that they will just sit there and wait for you to make all of the design decisions. So when I
That's
see
right.
that
That's right.
happening, I said, teka muna, mukhang ako lang ang nagde-design nito. Wala. So I asked
Walang
them,
input.
I asked them questions I already know the answer of. Why are we
Uh-uh.
doing this? Tell me. Because then you catch them not thinking. Because the
Yeah.
default is iwas trabaho, iwas and you're not
You know,
exercising, so they never improve, right? And I find it
I
very
totally
very
agree.
few people want that. Why is it so? Why is it such a prevalent uh, frame of mind just to wait to be spoon fed? And then on the opposite side, there are UP grads who don't want to listen to anything else because they think all of their ideas is so good that they
Yeah.
don't need you. And that's the opposite. You get a Bulacan State grad who will wait for everything to be given to them, and then you have the UP graduate who will not listen to anything at all. There must be a middle way. Maybe we should set up a new school somewhere in between. But my take on it is really I'm really old school. It's apprenticeship. What you learn
Okay.
in school is fine. Everything, the syllabus is fine. Learn that all because that's the bare minimum that you need to know. So that's what I told the graduates. You're competent at this level. You're competent at the subjects that were taught you. But don't believe that your education stops at your graduation, because it just starts at your graduation. So that's the reality of it all. And of course, if it gets too tiring for you, if all of these things I'm telling you doesn't make any sense or nakakapagod pakinggan, you're in the wrong business. Find some other career. There is no shortcut to becoming good in this profession. What is your most embarrassing
Do
moment
you
in the
have
practice?
any as about if
Wait,
you have
let me have
any?
a yes, of course, ang dami.
Please, I will take my drink as well.
When I was doing it was the mid 90s, and I was called in from Singapore by the head of Rockwell Land, because I had sent in a proposal for the landscape architecture of Rockwell, and Tom Padilla didn't know who I was. Gave me a call in Singapore and asked me, "Are you based in Singapore?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Actually, I think I met him here in the Philippines, and I got a chance to make a cold presentation.
Okay.
If you have enough track record, you can approach companies. Oh, this is my track record. In the old days, we just had a printed brochure, and that would attract the project managers enough to get, once they see that you've done
Right.
international work. So we had offices in Manila, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur at the time. So I got an appointment to see Tom Padilla, and in walks I think two of the Lopez brothers to meet me, and at the end of the meeting they asked about my family name, because it turns out that my father was the personal physician of their father, Don
Okay.
Eugenio Lopez. Um, I think if not for that, this Tong Padilla, who's pro foreign consultant, would have never considered hiring us for the job. And still, he wasn't convinced. I think the Lopez
Okay.
brothers told him, take a look at Paulo and his company. But I don't think that he was totally convinced. You know what he did? He gave me a call and told me, I'm going to Singapore. I want to see you. He had to go to Singapore to check out whether there was a company there. So the most embarrassing and most um, demeaning interactions I've had were with Filipinos, mostly project managers or things like people like Tom Padilla. So we were involved with Rockwell, and the foreign consultant was Skidmore, Owings Merrill, based in Chicago. And the head guy flew over for a major presentation and showed the whole design, including the outdoor spaces. And somewhere in the presentation, he made a big to do about, oh, this is the open plaza in front of the main building. They at the time they had proposed a main headquarters building where near where power plant is, and people are
Mhm.
going to come out during lunchtime into the sunny plaza and have their brown bag lunches in the sun. I was at the back of the room, and I almost
Too slick.
fell from my chair from laughing. But I didn't want to embarrass him. So at the end of the presentation, I went up to the guy. I forget his name. All these white people look alike anyway. I said, I think his name was Tom or John or whatever white name that was. I said,
Yeah.
we don't do that in Asia. We don't go out and lunch in the sun to eat our sandwiches. We go under the shade and we eat rice. Then he looks at his site plan and said, no, 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 no. Oh, we made a study. During lunch, the area will be in shade. We did a sun path diagram. So I look at it and I look at it and then I turn to him. Look, your sun path is still configured for the latitude of Chicago. It's a Manila is
Yeah, yeah. Total
the
difference
sun
on
doesn't.
path. That's true.
So he told me, just don't tell the Lopez brothers. So I did not. I should have. Because at the end of the process, and when the project was launched in a big ceremony at Meralco lobby, the Meralco main
Yeah.
building lobby,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So SOM was the architectural consultant, foreign. June Palafox was the local. PDAA was the landscape architects. During the presentation, who did Tong Padilla acknowledge? Only SOM. June and I were in the audience, and we both couldn't believe it. We just I went home. I confronted Tong Padilla, I don't know, soon after, right? And I made a case. Hey, Tong, why didn't you even acknowledge us? He looked at me incredulously. You know what he said? The Philippines is not ready for a Filipino landscape architect. That means you're not important
Wow.
enough to add value to this. The only way that the project was going to have value is if you have a foreign name on it. And that I promised never to, and I never got involved with Rockwell ever again. And so that's the most. To this day, I will put Tong down any chance I get.
Okay.
Although eventually, about 10 years later, I was editor in chief of Blueprint.
Uh-huh.
I was civil with him. I spoke to his people. I never met him again personally. I wouldn't be able to stand him anyway. But he knows, and I tell this story any chance I get. And this is the same with all foreign consultants. This is what they do. So
Right.
there's nothing any of these foreign consultants have in terms of technologies. Nothing. We all are better, can be better than them if we just work hard, continue to study and hone your craft. If you keep up to date, we're as good as anyone in the world. And that's acknowledged. The only problem is our clients don't acknowledge that, and we're invisible to them. So pandemic or no pandemic, our problem is still the same. We still have to get our act together, and as an association, project the profession and the individuals in them to the point where we're accepted as an essential member of a team in all of the projects, and valued for the contributions that we can make if given the chance. All we ask is the opportunity to do so. And the opportunity, of course, without the value engineering that hits most of the Filipino consultants.
Yeah,
The reason why the
definitely.
foreign consultants are able to do what they can is because they complain if it's value engineered. They say, no, uh, you can't replace the granite with cheap ceramic tiles, and that's what's happened.
Yeah.
That's what happens to us. Oh, you can't undersize the planting of instant trees, and you just put saplings. But that's what happens to us. So it bites us in the back, in the butt, because of the all the sins against us by our own fellow Filipino engineers and clients and project managers. So there are times, there have been maybe three times
Three times.
I walked out of a project
Wow.
because I just stood up once. I think the last one was the Hyatt, Grand Hyatt. I was in front of Alfred T, the head of federal land, and his
Yeah.
project manager had just value engineered our designs. So I said in front of the guy, "What the hell do you want me to do? You value engineered us. I won't have it. If you want to do this," I told in front of Alfred. I told him, "We'll finish it. We'll abide by our contract, but take the name of the company out of this. I don't want to be associated with this because you are down. It's a 5-star hotel, but you're working with a 2-star budget." I walked out. You have to do that. I mean, it's not worth it. It's very hard to swallow your pride, and that's what we do.
Right. Well, it's also the nature of how things are working in the Philippines. It's
What
kind of
we
sad
have to
though.
we have to find ways to get around it. I mean, and I think that those of us at our points in our professional lives, and I call on um, Efren, Aurelio, Ace Manlig, the heads of offices, even Victor, the younger one, the younger generation, Victor Luog, Mike Espiritu, even Neil Samak. We should at least tell our stories to all the young landscape architects come up, because it's so disheartening to walk into rooms or meetings like, say, of Pala, and not be recognized at all uh, for anything you've done. In any professional association, your track record precedes you, but we don't seem to have that, because a lot of especially UP graduates, they all end up elsewhere, and they will remember their professors, but they don't know anything about any of us who practice in the real world, because very few of them work for us. There are very few UP graduates in any of the top firms, because the preference of the principals, myself included, is a BSU graduate, or an Archie from somewhere else, who have more aptitude than UP graduate. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. It's not that we don't try to give you all the best of opportunities. We do. I mean, we bend over backwards to try and accommodate you, but I don't know what we're doing wrong, that we can't seem to keep UP graduates long enough to train them well. And so I doubt the future of the profession if we keep on doing this, because we can't grow our offices to the point that we can compete with foreigners. At this point, all of the top 5 offices should be around the 30 or 40 man level of pure design.
Right.
All right, right now we're stuck at 20, 15 to 20 or thereabouts, and then we're a revolving door, because people use us just to gain enough in their biodata, their CVs, to find work overseas or for outsourcing companies. I'm sorry, but that's so. Then a lot of us, also not myself, but then say,
Yeah.
"Oh, why the heck should we try? I mean, why give them any pay raise?" Which I do, but in other companies, your pay is not adjusted because anyway you'll resign in 8 months. You have no commitment to learn or to stay, and you're just using the office as a stepping stone. There's We have nothing against you improving, but it's a chicken or the egg thing, and I can't stop people from leaving. It's just that there'll be a point where maybe I'll stop caring about trying to train anyone because it's useless.
Okay.
You tell me. You tell me. I mean, what are we doing wrong? What are the offices doing wrong that we can't improve private practice in the Philippines so that the top six get to a point of 30 to 40 with work all over the country, which needs our work. I mean, you have dozens of tens, dozens of condos, dozens of residential subdivisions, and until the pandemic, you had hundreds of hotels and resorts, all needing landscape architects, but we're not there, and we lose a lot of the work for foreign consultants. Why? You tell me, Ponzo. You tell me. We're as
I
clueless.
I have
We're
nothing to
as
say.
clueless. So you guys need to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Why are our firms not expanding and improving or yeah, improving its position, and why aren't Filipino landscape architects? Is the Philippines now ready for a Filipino landscape architect or landscape architecture firm? Tell me.
I believe so. I believe so.
Yes,
I
but
think it's high
I'm sorry,
time.
you don't sign the checks.
I know. I know.
It will be have to be the people who sign the checks, the people at the tops of at the heads of the land dev or real estate development companies, and it will be the marketing people who don't know us at all. If there was only one group I'd focus our marketing on, our our uh, our communal marketing on as Pala. It's the marketing people who advise the real estate presidents and the boards to get this or that foreign consultant. We have to squash their notion that nothing will sell unless it's done by a foreign consultant. It's as simple
Right.
as that. I don't care about new technology. There's nothing we don't have access to already. Everything is much more open source now. There's nothing that they can provide except for track record, and that's the chicken or the egg. How can you compete with someone unless you say, resort design? How many of us have done a Shangri-La or a Hyatt? You count on the fingers of one hand. It's just myself and a few others. But then you won't be able to do it because often you walk into it, there's already a design made.
Right.
So this I cannot emphasize the immensity of the problem we have as a profession and as heads of offices, and as your individual eventually your individual practice. You have to look at all of this. We have to discuss this, uh, and we have to discuss this in out in the open and with no holds barred. I
Yes, I
mean,
agree.
I
I
thought that
agree.
this was going to be an opportunity to talk with the other heads and exchange, but apparently I'm the only one you invited. So I would hope that next time you have this, get a whole bunch of us, and then you can see where we all stand. And I don't know how many people are tuned in now, but if they're landscape architects, then this is the situation. Both as either new graduates, newly licensed, working with a firm or working for outsource, you have to question your career. You have a career path. When I was in IP Santos, I laid myself out a career path of 20 years. I was influenced by my father, who was in a specialty in medicine, and my brother, who was a management engineer. So I knew that a career path is like making a business plan for yourself. And so I
Yes.
had a business plan. I knew that I couldn't make it alone. I knew I had to form a partnership. I knew that the track record, and these are lessons learned from working with Ivy Santos, and I actually apprenticed for a few others, architects mostly, and I could also see the same thing. So I learned from working for other people, and seeing how they got to where they were, uh, uh, and the stories behind their success or lack of success. And this is how you make a success. This is how you make a career out of your career of your own, by learning the lessons from other people. Um, you cannot learn it from a book or from a TED talk. It has to be
Yeah.
localized. So I think I've ran out of saliva.
Yeah, I
So
was about to ask you, are you are you still
so
okay?
I guess invite me for the next one, and maybe we have a livelier exchange with
Yeah, with more
maybe I would,
people.
with more people, both our heads of offices, or people in middle management, or the young people. Actually, in our offices, walang
Yes.
masyadong middle management. Dahil nga,
Okay.
all you have is all of these old people like myself, and everyone in middle management is overseas or working for outsourcing groups. So all we have
Right.
are young people,
Right.
right? So I don't think
Right.
that's healthy for the profession as a whole, because we have whole generations of people ending up pushing mouse, uh, uh, inputting on CAD, or doing planting plants ad nauseum, and not learning anything, because we don't then build a generation of real professional practitioners who practice design in the real world, directly with Filipino clients, and seeing things actually built from what they design, not something in China or elsewhere. Of course, you learn a lot
Right.
from that, but don't you get tired? Aren't you aren't you uh, uh, hindi ba kayo nasasayangan sa potential nyo? Don't you have
Super.
any ambition? I'm sorry, I ask people this. Wala ba kayong mga ambisyon? Uh, when we were going through school, and I was in architecture, I finished architecture also. So I could see
Right.
that a
Yeah.
lot of us in architecture or landscape architecture, unless you had a role model, unless you had some famous architect, local or otherwise, to look up to, and you studied their lives. It's like just the religious thing. If you're religious, you study the lives of the saints, because you learn from them. I know it's corny, but that's the only way to go. How the hell are you going to get anywhere if you don't study what other people have done before you and learn from their mistakes? And so that's what I saw, is that these guys, I work for Concho, I work for Felipe Mendoza, I learned their stories, and learned that it was hard work, and understanding the context of both the project themselves as well as the people behind the projects, that allowed them to be successful. It's very interesting. That's why I'm still in it, even though I'm not a rich man. But that's a problem. We're all in this together, unless we all get together and figure out what we're all doing wrong. Then the outlook, even pandemic or otherwise, will be the same. We will still be relegated to second place. We will not get the respect of our clients. We will not get the uh, the opportunities to shine anywhere. I think I'll end
Right.
there before I pass out.
I was actually about to ask one more question, just
Sure, sure.
if you
Just
don't
one more
mind.
question.
Um, out of curiosity, no, um, how do you think you keep your firm attractive to younger people, or what do you think you do brings them to you, or to apply to you, or to either intern, or as it grows also
Yeah.
at this rate.
Well, we try to nurture the people in the office. We work in teams of two or three under a project manager, if possible, a landscape architect with experience. But of course, we don't have enough of that. So we have five. We have five teams led by a landscape architect or architect with a number of years with the firm. And so it's a sort of studio situation where theoretically you learn. It's harder now in the pandemic. You learn from your project managers. And before the pandemic, whenever I could, I would bring the team together and we would have internal charrettes. So the design
Okay.
process, it's me and the PMs plus everybody else, and I make sure I force them to contribute. That's
Yeah.
the only way you learn. Okay, and then when you do learn and you get up a little in the hierarchy, we have incentives for travel. Until the pandemic,
Okay.
once a year, we would I would the company would pay for all of the project managers to go with me overseas. So in the last 10 years, we've taken at least the PMs, and then we give discounts to the staff if they want to go. Um, and then we share housing and the cheap hotels. But we've gone to Singapore, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Malaysia, and then it's usually a 2 or 3 day walking tour of projects we previously identified. Taiwan also. And so one of the things I learned early on, it's hard to expect a landscape architect to design, say, a resort if they've never been to a resort, if they've never been to an urban park in a good country, if they've never
Right.
seen a plaza that's designed without value engineering. And so you have to show them this. It's the only way to learn. When Buji Layo needed an architect partner, he found Royal Pineda, whose background is very, very middle class. He comes from a a very simple background, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he had immense potential. You know what Buji did? Buji brought him across all around the world. They stayed in the best resorts, they went to the best places, the best restaurants by absorption. Are you familiar with My Fair Lady or the play Pygmalion?
No,
My
I
Fair
can't say
Lady,
I am.
it's Broadway. Is that this English professor, Professor Higgins, had a bet with a friend of his that he could turn any street vendor of flowers, and that's a My Fair Lady, into a woman of leisure, into an upper class lady by tutoring her in manners and diction and the way to comport. So it was a project to bring a lower class person up to the upper class by dressing them well and teaching them the ways of the upper class. And this is what Buji Layog did with Royal Pineda. And at the start, years ago, I'm sorry, this is just amongst us, diba? We're just LAs here.
Yeah.
Because I used to run Blueprint, and I would find it very difficult to interview Royal because he would not be able to express himself well. Of course, now he's learned a lot, and he's able to walk with anyone else because now he also has a track record of doing so many things. But that's learning by being in those places. So my suggestion for a lot of you who don't have the opportunity of working for firms or don't want to by whatever reason, is spend your money. If you're independently wealthy, you go around the world and look at all these places where there's good landscape architecture and absorb by being there. That's the next best thing to actually those 15 projects that I said that you
Right.
had to go through, is to actually go to places that you've read in books or in a magazine and see uh, what it is on the ground. Experience the spaces as designed by landscape architects in reality, because that's the only way you learn. That's the reason why I say the 15 is you need the feedback loop from a two-dimensional drawing to three-dimensional reality, but with the added experience of having to go through hell to try and convince people to follow your designs. That's the
Yes.
only way you can learn. There's no other way you can learn how to design and get something built unless you go through that process.
Sure.
I think that's
Okay.
enough.
I think that I think we've exhausted our thoughts
You've
today.
exhausted me, so that's 2 hours of.
Well, the goal was actually just to really know what you're thinking of about the industry and everything, and later on we'll get people to come together and really talk about things. I guess it's just really hard now because there's a lag between conversation and everything, but I think this is a great starting point.
Yes,
It's a
I mean,
good, yeah,
the any long journey
right,
starts with the first step, and
yeah,
any change comes from talking about it. And
yes,
once we talk
definitely,
about it, then we can do something about it. But we need to exchange ideas. I'm really often I get really frustrated not being able to discuss landscape architecture with anyone. Uh,
okay,
uh, my staff are tired of hearing me, um, and it's rare I get the opportunity to talk to anyone who's any bit interested about practice. Very hard to talk to any of the younger people. Being old, there's immediately that wall they set, and then you know what they're thinking. Oh, it's Sir Paulo with his Tito jokes again, and nothing gets through. And I can't. We don't speak the same language, because the language they
right,
speak now is Taglish, and they speak in very short bursts, and the attention spans are like Twitter. So how can you engage anyone? It's I find it amazing that you're able to have me for an hour and 3 quarters, and pretend that you're still interested,
Oh
when
no, don't worry.
normally.
I'm not pretending, naman. I'm
No, no,
not
i'm
pretending
just
at
i'm
all,
just
actually.
I'm just being facetious. I mean, a lot of the times I can tell, they just want to walk away because they got other things to do. But you know, what are we here for? The older generation, unless we can impart all of this experience and knowledge, it's wasted, because nobody wants to listen to your stories. And I don't know. When I was your age, I'm sorry. How old are you?
I'm 28.
Yeah, when I was no by 28, I'd no by 29 I'd already set up the partnership. But
PDA. Yeah.
younger than you, all I did was ask the older guys to tell me their stories, because I knew that the lessons to be learned were in those stories, and that's how I learned not to make their mistakes, is
Right.
by listening to stories. Um, that's what makes us human. Also, if we have no stories to tell, then we have nothing to leave behind either.
That's
What's
true.
your legacy? Your legacy, and this is my philosophy. It's eons ago, the young citizens of Athens had to recite an oath. It's called the Ephebic Oath, and the Ephebic Oath, uh, essentially, you say, we promise to abide by our community, our city, as best we can, follow the rules, respect the elders, apply ourselves, and leave the city a better place than when we first came to it. or leave the country a better place. And that's what we all should do, is through our profession, create a better Philippines, albeit outdoor spaces, because that's our specialty. But it's essential that we help leave a better place than when we first came to it. And that's as simple as it gets. If you can't do that, then you have no legacy. And that's the oath we all should take. I better say goodbye.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking your time and making cuento everything that you've gone through. It's not, I'm pretty sure it's not even everything. I know you have so much more that you'd want to share. But
Well,
just for the
I'm
time that
writing
we
the
have right
book.
now.
I'm writing the book,
Yeah,
so
well, yeah, that's right. That's right. We can read up on it after
and it's
when
not
you have
just
it
me.
done
A lot,
in.
my our fellow landscape architects, even younger than I, those in the 40s and 50s, those who've also been
Right,
overseas. They've got
right,
stories to
right.
tell. We have to get them
Yes,
to all the guys in Dubai and Saudi Arabia. They have stories to tell. They have to share these stories for all of us to benefit from them. Even the guys inside the outsourcing companies, they have stories, but we have to share them. Otherwise, uh, you there's nothing that can be learned, bad or good,
right.
from what you've been through. It's sharing the experiences that make us all better, not just myself. So I'll
Right.
leave you
Well,
with that, Fonso.
that sure. That's the whole point of this as well. Hopefully we can have you back again with younger landscape architects, people that are around your age or a little bit,
Hey, I'm
just
not
to
the
have that
oldest.
little
I'm not the
banter.
oldest
I
landscape
I know, I
architect
know,
around.
I know
But
you
it's getting
aren't.
to
I
a
know you
point where
aren't.
I'm one of the oldest, so I don't like
Yeah,
that.
I know.
And
Yeah, but I love just hearing people talk and just hearing what they think about their profession, because that's what really gets me. Then I talk to people my age, and I think I haven't been talking to many people that are many more years my senior, because I haven't gotten that opportunity. But if when we have this, I think that would be a great platform to just talk, basically. Yeah.
yes, I don't want to walk into another room again with Palo or anywhere else, even on Zoom, and then think to myself, no, these guys don't know who I am or what my generation has contributed. I don't like that. I mean, IP Santos has a book. Very few have read his book completely.
Mm-hmm.
I read it because I lived it. But how many of the younger generations have really learned the lessons of IP Santos, or any of
Right.
us
Right.
at all? So
Right.
just I guess I leave whoever's watching this with that question. Have you learned about how others have gone through before you, and have you learned any of those lessons? Because how else are you going to plot your way forward unless you learn those things? Anyway, I'm out of words.
No worries. Well, thank you again for your time. This is where we wrap everything up. We have upcoming episodes later on in the I think in a couple of weeks. We just have to get everything ironed out. But I'm glad that we got this sorted out and we kicked this off at a good note. And everyone is just you're just very candid with what you're making cuento, because that's really the
Oh,
whole
I'm
point of
I'm beyond
everything.
I'm beyond holding anything back. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, you can quote me on anything and everything, especially
sure.
Tong
Well, we'll
Padilla.
take that on you. Okay. I think we'd like to say good night. Thank you again.
Good night, Fonson. Good
Um,
night, everyone.
thank you. Thank you so
And I
much.
hope to
Thank you
see
so
you
much,
all
also.
soon.
Thank you. All right. See you, sir. Okay. Thank you for the viewers that are still here. Thank you for taking the time to really just stay with us and listen to what Sir Paulo was saying and what Sir Paulo is making cuento. I think there are a lot of insights from what he has said, and I hope that in the later episodes we'll get to hear the thoughts and the ideas and what what people just see, how people see the our profession basically, and the different aspects of it. So with that, I'd like to say good night. I'd like to say thank you to Sir Paulo again. Please stay safe wherever you are. Stay dry and just keep on trucking. Alright, bye guys. See you. Night.